when struggling teacher Maya Collins reluctantly accepted the inheritance of her distant aunt's abandoned laundromat in Riverview Heights, Pennsylvania, a property she initially planned to liquidate for $12,000 to pay off crushing student loan debt. She never imagined that fixing a malfunctioning washing machine would reveal a hidden compartment containing classified Pentagon blueprints from the Cold War era, expose her quiet aunt as a former intelligence analyst with top security clearance, who maintained her cover for 30 years, connect her with 4 surviving members of a covert defense operation who had sworn to secrecy until 2025. Reunite scattered government teams whose members had been part of a classified network, and transform her from a debt-ridden high school teacher to the unexpected custodian of national security documents that the Department of Defense is now calling one of the most significant civilian discoveries of the century. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The final notice from Northeast Bank sat unopened on Maya Collins' cluttered desk for almost a week. Student loan statements, past due utility bills, and collection agency letters formed precarious piles around it, tangible evidence of the financial quicksand that had been pulling her deeper since her father's extended hospitalization 3 months earlier. The crisp white envelope with its threatening red urgent stamp seemed to mock her situation, another demand for money she simply didn't have. At 34, Maya had built a modest but fulfilling career as a high school history teacher in Oakdale, a blue-collar suburb outside Philadelphia where generations of her family had lived. The 1960s brick school with its squeaking hallways and perpetual smell of floor polish had been her second home since accepting her teaching position 8 years ago. Her salary covered basic living expenses for herself and her retired father. But his recent heart surgery and complicated recovery had drained her savings and maxed out her credit cards at alarming speed. "Miss Collins, aren't you going to open that?" asked Zach, her teaching assistant, pointing toward the envelope while organizing a stack of ungraded essays. At 22, fresh out of college and working toward his teaching certification, Zach carried the earnest expression of someone still uncorrupted by the financial realities of an educator's salary. His enthusiasm for teaching history remained untarnished by budget cuts and administrative politics. "It's probably just another payment reminder," she replied, sipping the lukewarm coffee that had replaced her once daily specialty, coffee shop treat, another small sacrifice to economize. "We've got midterm projects to grade. That's more important right now." The envelope was from Westfield and Associates, a law firm she'd never heard of. Maya had been avoiding it because unexpected legal correspondence rarely brought good news. In her experience, when her mother died 6 years ago, it had been a flurry of legal papers that had eventually transferred their modest family home to her father, along with medical debts that had taken years to resolve. "You should at least see what it is," Zach persisted, his practical nature asserting itself. "What if it's something important?" With a resigned sigh, Maya tore open the envelope, expecting perhaps a debt consolidation offer or worse, notification of yet another loan being sent to collections. Her eyes widened as she scanned the formal language of the document inside. "What is it?" Zach asked, immediately alert to her changed expression. "My Aunt Vivian died last month," she said slowly, absorbing the information. "Apparently, she left me her property, a closed laundromat on Maple Street in Riverview Heights. I barely knew her." Zach's face brightened immediately, possibilities racing across his expressive features. "That's great, right? How much is it worth? Could you sell it and pay off some of your debts?" The hope in his voice reflected Maya's own momentary surge of optimism. She continued reading the letter, her excitement fading somewhat. "The laundromat has been closed for over 2 years. There are back taxes owed, and according to this, it needs significant repairs to meet code requirements before it could operate again. But still, real estate is real estate, Zach offered. Even if it's not in great shape, it must be worth something. Maya nodded, calculations already running through her mind. Riverview Heights was about 40 miles away, not exactly next door, but not prohibitively distant either. She had vague childhood memories of visiting Aunt Vivian's laundromat once or twice, a sterile place with humming machines and the overpowering scent of detergent. Vivian Collins had been her father's older sister, a reserved woman who lived alone and rarely attended family gatherings. When she did appear at holidays, she would sit quietly, observing conversations rather than participating in them. According to this, Maya continued, there's already been an offer of $12,000 from the neighboring business owner who wants to expand. The lawyer says I could accept it without even visiting the property. $12,000 would help with your dad's medical bills, right? Zach asked. Maya nodded again, hope rekindling. It wouldn't solve everything, but it would clear the most pressing medical debts and perhaps give her breathing room to reorganize her finances. The weight that had been crushing her chest for months lightened slightly at the prospect. I need to call this lawyer back, she decided, checking the time. I've got a free period after lunch. I'll see if we can fast-track this sale. The call with Mr. Westfield, a precise, formal attorney whose clipped tone suggested significant experience, presented an unexpected complication. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Ms. Collins, while I understand your eagerness to resolve this matter quickly, there is a specific condition in your aunt's will that cannot be circumvented, he explained after Maya had expressed her desire for an expedited sale. Your aunt stipulated that the heir must personally inspect the property before any transfer or sale can be finalized. Is that really necessary? Maya asked, frustration evident in her voice. The laundromat's been closed for years. What's there to inspect? I cannot speak to Ms. Vivian Collins' reasoning, Westfield replied, but her instructions were explicit. The property must be physically inspected by the heir before any disposition can occur. It's not an unusual requirement in the state law, ensuring the heir makes informed decisions. Maya closed her eyes, calculating the costs of such a trip against her dwindling resources. While not a cross-country journey, it would still require taking time off work, gas money, and potentially dealing with complications at the property itself. Is there any way around this requirement? She asked. I'm dealing with some significant financial challenges right now, and taking time off work is difficult. I understand your situation, Ms. Collins, Westfield said, his tone softening slightly. However, your aunt's instructions were unambiguous. Without the required inspection, the probate court won't release the deed, preventing any legal transfer or sale. Maya sighed, rubbing her temple where a stress headache was forming. How long would I need to be there? A thorough inspection and signing the necessary documentation could be accomplished in a few hours, Westfield replied. My associate in Riverview Heights, Ms. Patel, would meet you at the property with the paperwork. And then I could proceed. With selling to the interested buyer? Yes, assuming everything is in order. There is one additional matter, Westfield added, his voice taking on a slightly different tone. Your aunt left a sealed envelope to be delivered to you personally, only upon your inspection of the property. It was quite important to her that you receive this after seeing the laundromat. This unexpected detail gave Maya pause. What could her reserved aunt possibly have wanted to tell her? They had barely spoken more than polite pleasantries at occasional family gatherings. A letter? Did she leave letters for anyone else? No, Miss Collins, just for you. And she was quite specific about the circumstances of its delivery. After ending the call, Maya sat at her desk, staring absently at the motivational posters that adorned her classroom walls. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, surrounded by messages about perseverance and overcoming obstacles, while feeling completely overwhelmed by her own circumstances. That evening, Maya visited her father at his small apartment. Since his surgery, Alan Collins had been slowly regaining his strength, but at 68, recovery took longer than either of them had anticipated. The medical bills continued to arrive with alarming regularity, each one a reminder of just how precarious their financial situation had become. "You look tired, kiddo," her father observed as she unpacked the groceries she'd brought. Though still weak, his eyes missed nothing. "Long day," Maya replied, arranging his medications in the weekly pill organizer. "Actually, I got some news. Today, Aunt Vivian passed away last month." Alan Collins' face fell. "Viv's gone? Why didn't anyone tell us?" "According to the lawyer, they've been trying to locate heirs. Apparently, she left her laundromat to me." Her father was quiet for a moment, seemingly lost in thought. "That's Vivian for you. Always kept to herself, did things her own way. You two were more alike than you knew." "Me and Aunt Vivian? Dad, I barely knew her. She kept track of you, though. Always asked about your teaching, your students. She was proud of you, in her way." He shifted in his chair, wincing slightly at the movement. "So what are you going to do with a laundromat?" Maya explained the situation, the property's condition, the waiting buyer, and the requirement to inspect it personally. "Sounds like Viv," her father said with a small smile. "Never made anything simple. But you should go, Maya, not just for the money, though I know that would help. Vivian wouldn't have left it to you without reason. What reason could she possibly have had? She was just a quiet woman who ran a laundromat her whole life." Her father's expression changed subtly. There was always more to Vivian than that. We weren't close as adults, but she wasn't exactly what she seemed. What does that mean?" Maya pressed, intrigued by this hint of mystery about her reserved aunt. "Just that people contain multitudes, as your literary friends might say," he replied evasively. "Go see the laundromat. Read whatever letter she left you. Vivian deserves that much." That Saturday morning, Maya drove the 40 miles to Riverview Heights, her mind occupied with both practical concerns and growing curiosity. She'd arranged to meet Ms. Patel, Westfield's associate, at the laundromat at 10 a.m., hoping to complete the inspection and paperwork efficiently and be back in time to finish grading her students' midterm projects. Riverview Heights proved to be a once prosperous small town showing signs of economic struggle. Main Street featured a mix of open businesses and vacant storefronts, the latter bearing witness to changing retail patterns and economic downturns. Maya followed her GPS to Maple Street, a side road running parallel to the small town's commercial center. Collins' family laundromat stood on a corner lot, its faded blue awning and dusty windows immediately identifiable. The building was solid, a rectangular brick structure from the 1960s with large front windows now covered with newspaper from the inside. A small parking lot with faded lines contained 3 cars, one presumably belonging to Miss Patel, who stood by the entrance checking her watch. "Miss Collins?" The lawyer called as Maya parked. "I'm Nisha Patel, Mr. Westfield's associate. Thank you for coming." The young attorney, perhaps only a few years older than Maya, extended her hand in greeting. "I have all the necessary documentation with me, but first, let's inspect the property so you can make an informed decision." Ms. Patel produced a set of keys and unlocked the front door. The interior of the laundromat was dimly lit by sunlight, filtering through the newspaper-covered windows, illuminating rows of washing machines and dryers covered in dust sheets. The air smelled of stale detergent and disuse. As you can see, the equipment remains in place, though it hasn't been operational for over 2 years. Ms. Patel explained, flipping a light switch that brought fluorescent tubes flickering to life overhead. "Your aunt closed the business due to health concerns, but maintained ownership of the building and equipment." Maya walked slowly between the rows of machines, memories stirring of childhood visits. The space was larger than she remembered, with about 20 washing machines along one wall and 15 dryers along another. A central island held folding tables, and a small office area occupied one corner behind a counter. The interested buyer, Mr. Leung, owns the restaurant next door. He's planning to expand his business into this space, Ms. Patel continued. His offer of $12,000 is primarily for the real estate, as the equipment has limited value given its age and condition. Maya nodded, running her hand along a dust-covered machine. It seems straightforward enough. I don't see any major structural issues, just the expected wear of an older building. Before we proceed with the paperwork, your aunt left specific instructions that you should inspect the office area personally, Ms. Patel said, gesturing toward the glass-walled enclosure in the corner. The small office contained a desk, filing cabinets, and an ancient computer that probably hadn't been upgraded in a decade. Unlike the main laundromat floor, the space felt more personal, with a few faded photographs on the wall showing the laundromat in its prime. In one, a younger Vivian Collins stood proudly in front of the newly opened business, her expression serious but with unmistakable pride in her eyes. Your aunt also left this for you, Ms. Patel said, producing an envelope from her briefcase. As per her instructions, I'm to give this to you now that you've seen the property. Maya accepted the envelope, noting her name written in precise handwriting on the front. Do you know what this is about? I'm afraid not, Ms. Patel replied. Mr. Westfield prepared it according to your aunt's instructions. I'll give you some privacy to read it while I check some measurements in the main area for the paperwork. Alone in the office, Maya opened the envelope and found a single sheet of paper with the same precise handwriting. Maya, if you're reading this, you've come to the laundromat as I hoped you would. What appears to be a simple business holds something of significant value. The third washing machine from the left wall has a false back panel. The access code is your birthday, month, day, year, 6 digits. What you'll find there explains everything. Trust no one with this information until you've reviewed the contents yourself. Your Aunt Vivian Collins. Maya read the note twice. Certain she must have misunderstood. A false panel? Access code? This sounded like something from one of her father's spy novels, not the reality of her quiet aunt's laundromat. Yet the specificity of the instructions and the mention of her birthday suggested this wasn't a joke or confusion. Folding the note and slipping it into her pocket, Maya returned to the main floor where Miss Patel was measuring the square footage. Everything all right? The attorney asked, looking up from her task. Yes, fine, Maya replied, trying to keep her voice casual. Would you mind if I checked a few of the machines? Just to get a sense of their condition. Of course. Take your time. Moving methodically to avoid drawing attention, Maya counted to the third washing machine from the left wall. It looked identical to the others, an industrial-sized front loader, with a control panel across the top. Glancing over her shoulder to ensure Miss Patel was occupied, Maya examined the machine carefully, looking for anything unusual. The control panel had a small digital keypad for cycle selection that looked newer than the machine itself, possibly a later upgrade. On a hunch, Maya pressed the custom cycle button, which revealed a request for a 6-digit code. Her heart beating faster, she entered her birthday, 051289. The display flashed once, and Maya heard a faint click from the back of the machine. Carefully, she pulled the machine slightly away from the wall and discovered that the entire back panel was now loose. Glancing again at Miss Patel, who was still engaged with measurements at the far end of the room, Maya eased the panel open, just enough to peer inside. The hidden compartment was shallow but wide, spanning the entire back of the washing machine. Inside, she glimpsed what appeared to be a metal case secured with a combination lock, approximately the size of a large laptop computer. There was no way to examine it properly with Miss Patel in the room, and certainly no way to remove it without being noticed. Carefully replacing the panel and pushing the machine back against the wall, Maya's mind raced with questions. What had her aunt hidden here, and why? Why direct Maya to it now, after her death? The mysterious nature of the discovery contrasted sharply with Maya's memories of her practical, unassuming aunt. "Miss Patel," Maya called, making a quick decision. "I think I may need some more time to consider this property. There are some aspects I'd like to examine more thoroughly before making a final decision on the sale." The attorney looked surprised. "Of course. Though I should mention that Mr. Leung is quite eager to proceed and may not maintain his offer indefinitely." "I understand," Maya replied. "But given the circumstances, I think it would be responsible to take a more detailed inventory. Before proceeding, would it be possible to get keys to the property so I can return for a more thorough inspection?" Miss Patel considered this request. "That's not standard procedure, but as you are the legal heir, I don't see any impediment. I would need you to sign a temporary possession form, acknowledging your responsibility for the property while you consider your options." "That's fine," Maya agreed, relief washing over her. She needed time alone in the laundromat to investigate her aunt's hidden compartment properly. As they completed the necessary paperwork, Maya's thoughts kept returning to the hidden case. Her practical, financially stressed self reminded her that the $12,000 from selling the property would solve her immediate problems. But another part of her, perhaps the historian who valued mysteries and discoveries, couldn't ignore what her aunt had concealed. Miss Patel provided Maya with a set of keys and her business card. "Please contact me when you've made your decision. For legal purposes, we should resolve this matter within 2 weeks if possible." After the attorney departed, Maya immediately returned to the third washing machine. With no one watching, she entered the code again and removed the back panel completely. The metal case was heavier than she expected, and as she carefully extracted it from the hiding place, she noticed it was secured not with a standard combination lock, but with what appeared to be a sophisticated electronic locking mechanism with a keypad. Setting the case on one of the folding tables, Maya examined it more closely. It was constructed of brushed steel with reinforced corners, resembling high-security containers she'd seen in documentaries about classified materials. A small note had been taped to the top, again in her aunt's handwriting. Second code, Allen's. Birthday plus your graduation year, 8 digits. Maya entered her father's birthday followed by the year she graduated college, 021919542011. The lock emitted a soft beep, and the mechanism released with a solid click. Taking a deep breath, Maya opened the case. Inside, protected by foam padding, she found several folders marked with what appeared to be government classification codes, a small external hard drive, a sealed envelope marked Personal Maya Collins, and most surprisingly, a Pentagon identification badge with her aunt's photo and the name Dr. Vivian Collins, Senior Systems Analyst, Level 4 clearance. Maya stared at the ID badge in disbelief. Her quiet, unassuming aunt, the woman who had run a small-town laundromat for decades, had apparently worked for the Pentagon at some point. Nothing in Maya's memories or family stories had ever hinted at such a connection. With trembling hands, she opened the personal envelope first. Inside was a letter, several pages long, in her aunt's precise handwriting. "Dear Maya, if you're reading this, I've passed away, and you've discovered what I've protected for nearly 3 decades. My identity as Vivian Collins, laundromat owner, was only part of my life. From 1982 to 1996, I served as a systems analyst for the Department of Defense, specifically working on architectural security designs for Pentagon renovations during the Cold War period. What you found are copies of classified blueprints and security protocols that were reported destroyed in 1996 following a security breach. In truth, I preserved these copies when I discovered evidence suggesting the breach was orchestrated. to cover up a more serious vulnerability, one that was never addressed. I left government service that year, establishing the Laundromat as both legitimate business and cover, while I continued private analysis of the security implications. The external drive contains my complete findings, including evidence identifying those responsible for suppressing information about critical structural and digital vulnerabilities within our nation's most sensitive defense installation. I've watched your career with admiration. Your dedication to teaching history, to preserving and communicating truth, suggests you understand that sometimes protecting our country means ensuring accountability and transparency, not just maintaining secrecy. Contact Professor Nathan Blackwood at Harrisburg University's Department of National Security Studies. He's a former colleague who can help authenticate these materials and ensure they reach the appropriate authorities who won't simply bury them again. The Laundromat is yours to sell or keep, but these documents represent my true legacy. Handle them with the care they deserve. With love and trust, your Aunt Vivian. Maya read the letter twice, her teacher's mind methodically cataloging the incredible revelations against her limited knowledge of her aunt. The quiet woman who had operated washing machines and made change for customers had apparently led a double life as a Pentagon analyst with access to highly sensitive information. Looking at the folders in the case, Maya could see they contained technical drawings, security protocols, and what appeared to be extensive notes in her aunt's handwriting. The implications were staggering, not just that Vivian Collins had been something entirely different from what her family believed, but that she had potentially uncovered something significant enough to hide for decades and then entrust to her rarely seen niece. Maya's phone chimed with a text from her father. How did it go at the Laundromat? Any surprises? She stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Did her father know about Vivian's government work? Had he been keeping secrets too? The simple trip to inspect an inherited property had suddenly become complicated beyond anything she could have imagined. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the newspaper-covered windows, Maya Collins realized that the $12,000 offer for the property, the solution to her financial problems that had seemed so important that morning, had become almost irrelevant compared to the responsibility she'd just inherited. Whatever her aunt had discovered about Pentagon security vulnerabilities, she had deemed it important enough to preserve for nearly 30 years and then pass on specifically to Maya. Carefully replacing everything in the case except the letter, Maya locked it securely. She would need time to process this information and decide her next steps. As she prepared to leave, securing the washing machine's false panel and ensuring the laundromat was locked, she understood that her life had just changed in ways she couldn't yet fully comprehend. The simple teacher who had inherited an abandoned laundromat had discovered not just a hidden compartment, but a gateway to national security secrets that might still have significant implications decades after they were first concealed. Back in her apartment that evening, Maya spread the contents of the metal case across her dining table, creating a makeshift investigation board that would have impressed her history students. The classified folders contained detailed blueprints of Pentagon security systems from the mid-1990s, showing everything from ventilation access points to emergency protocol routes. Her aunt's meticulous notes filled the margins, highlighting specific areas with red marks and question marks. The external hard drive presented a challenge. Maya's laptop was relatively new, but the drive used an older connection type. A quick trip to an electronics store solved the problem with an adapter, allowing her to access the drive's contents. The files were organized with the same precision that characterized Vivian Collins' handwriting, folders labeled by date spanning from 1996 to just 3 months before her death. What were you involved in, Aunt Vivian? Maya whispered to the empty room as she clicked through document after document. The most recent files included news articles about Pentagon renovation projects and security upgrades, alongside her aunt's Analyzes comparing these public reports with the classified information she had preserved. One document particularly caught Maya's attention, a lengthy report titled, Persistent Vulnerabilities, 1996 Present, with a note attached, For Maya, start here. The document outlined specific security weaknesses that, according to Vivian's analysis, had never been properly addressed despite multiple renovation projects and security overhauls. Maya's phone rang, startling her. Her father's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, Dad," she answered, suddenly uncertain how much to share. "You never texted me back about the laundromat," Alan Collins said. "Everything okay?" Maya hesitated, her aunt's warning to trust no one echoing in her mind. But this was her father, Vivian's brother. Surely he would know something about his sister's secret life. "Dad, did you know Aunt Vivian worked for the Pentagon?" The silence that followed. Was answer enough? "How did you find out?" he finally asked, his voice noticeably quieter. "She left something for me at the laundromat." "Documents, Dad, and a letter explaining that she was some kind of systems analyst with high-level security clearance." Another pause. "I knew she did. Government work before opening the laundromat. She never discussed the details, said it was classified. I assumed it was something administrative, maybe accounting. Vivian was always good with numbers." "This wasn't accounting, Dad. She had blueprints, security protocols. She said she left her job because she discovered vulnerabilities that someone was trying to cover up." "Maya," her father's voice took on an urgency she rarely heard. "Be careful with whatever she left you." Vivian became different after she left that job, more cautious. Installed extra locks on her doors. Checked her car before driving. I thought she was being paranoid, but maybe. Did she ever mention someone named Nathan Blackwood? A professor at Harrisburg University? No, never. "Maya, maybe you should just turn whatever this is over to the authorities." "That's just it, Dad. According to Aunt Vivian, certain authorities were part of the problem. She kept these documents hidden for almost 30 years because she didn't trust the normal channels." After promising her father she would be careful, Maya ended the call and returned to the documents. The more she read, the more she understood why her aunt had been cautious. The materials detailed not just security vulnerabilities but included correspondence suggesting deliberate suppression of information about these weaknesses. Names of officials, contractors, and security personnel appeared throughout, some with notes indicating potential involvement in the cover-up. Sleep eluded Maya that night. Her teacher's salary and student loan debt seemed trivial compared to the responsibility she now faced. By morning, she had made a decision. She would contact Professor Blackwood, as her aunt had suggested. If Vivian had trusted him, he might provide guidance on how to proceed. Harrisburg University was about an hour's drive from her apartment. Rather than calling ahead and potentially alerting anyone monitoring Blackwood's communications, Maya decided to visit the campus directly. Monday was her day off from teaching, giving her the perfect opportunity. The Department of National Security Studies occupied the 4th floor of the university's Social Sciences building. Maya found Professor Blackwood's office easily enough, his name displayed on a door alongside an impressive list of credentials. She knocked, heart pounding with uncertainty. "Come in," called a deep voice. Nathan Blackwood was not what Maya had expected. In her mind, a former Pentagon colleague of her aunt's would be austere, formal, perhaps reminiscent of the attorney she'd dealt with. Instead, she found a man in his early 60s with a salt and pepper beard, wearing a cardigan, with leather elbow patches that seemed almost a deliberate caricature of academic attire. His office was cluttered with books, papers, and what appeared to be historical security badges framed on one wall. "Professor Blackwood? My name is Maya Collins. Vivian Collins was my aunt." The professor's expression shifted immediately from polite inquiry to intense focus. "Vivian's niece? The teacher?" Maya nodded, surprised. You knew about me? Vivian mentioned you occasionally. Said you had her analytical mind but a much better heart. He gestured to a chair. Please sit down. I was sorry to hear of her passing. When was it? About a month ago, according to the lawyer. I just found out last week when I inherited her laundromat. Blackwood's eyebrows rose. The laundromat. I see. And is that what brings you here today? Maya glanced at the office door, which remained slightly ajar. Blackwood followed her gaze and immediately stood to close it. Old habits, he said with a slight smile. In our line of work, open doors were invitation to unwanted ears. Once seated again, Maya kept her voice low. She left something for me. Hidden in one of the washing machines. Documents about Pentagon security systems, blueprints. Her analysis of vulnerabilities. And a letter saying I should contact you. Blackwood leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. After all these years, he murmured, almost to himself. Then, focusing on Maya again, did you bring these materials with you? No, I wasn't sure. I mean, I don't know who to trust. A smile of approval crossed his face. Vivian taught you well, it seems. Or perhaps caution is simply in the Collins family DNA. He reached for a notepad, wrote something, then slid it across the desk to her. The note read, Office may not be secure. Meet at Riverside Park, North Bench by boat launch, 3 p.m. Maya nodded her understanding, then spoke in a normal volume. Thank you for the book recommendation, Professor. I'll definitely check out your work on Cold War security protocols. It sounds perfect for my curriculum. Happy to help a fellow educator, Blackwood replied smoothly, standing to open his office door again. Please email me if you have any questions about incorporating it into your lessons. The professor's caution both reassured and unsettled Maya. If a man who now lived in the open world of academia still maintained such security measures, perhaps her aunt's concerns were even more significant than she had realized. Maya spent the next few hours exploring the campus and surrounding area, constantly checking to see if anyone seemed to be following her. The behavior felt paranoid, something she would have laughed at days earlier, yet now seemed entirely reasonable given what she had discovered. Riverside Park was busy with joggers and people walking dogs despite the cool weather. Maya located the North Bench easily, positioned with a clear view of both the boat launch and the park's main entrance. She arrived 15 minutes early, watching carefully as people came and went along the riverside path. Professor Blackwood appeared precisely at 3 p.m., now dressed in a more casual jacket and baseball cap. He sat beside her without greeting, his eyes scanning the area before. He finally spoke. Vivian and I worked together for 8 years, he began without preamble. She was the most meticulous systems analyst I ever met. When she identified the vulnerabilities in the '96 renovation plans, she followed every proper channel to report them. And when those reports disappeared into administrative black holes, she persisted. That persistence cost her her career. What exactly did she find? Maya asked. The official story was that Vivian had misinterpreted the plans, that her concerns reflected outdated information already addressed in revisions. She was marginalized, assigned to increasingly trivial projects until she resigned. Blackwood's voice held old anger. Several of us knew better, but by then, the renovation was underway. Contracts worth millions had been signed, and questioning the process meant risking your clearance and career. But she kept copies of the original plans. Blackwood nodded. Vivian always maintained independent records. It was her way. Trust but verify, and when verification failed, preserve the evidence. He turned to face Maya directly. The question now is what you intend to do with what she preserved. The directness of the question caught Maya off guard. I don't know. That's why I'm here. She trusted you. The materials your aunt preserved aren't just historically interesting. Ms. Collins. If her analysis was correct, and Vivian was rarely wrong, then those security vulnerabilities may still exist in some form. The Pentagon has undergone additional renovations since 1996, but core systems often remain intact beneath cosmetic changes. Are you saying these documents could still be relevant to national security today? Potentially. Or they could reveal a pattern of deliberate negligence that certain people would prefer remain buried. Blackwood checked his watch. We shouldn't stay in one place too long. Walk with me. As they strolled along the riverside path, Blackwood continued. Vivian contacted me about 5 years ago after decades of silence. She had been monitoring public information about Pentagon security updates and believed her original concerns had never been properly addressed. She mentioned creating a comprehensive analysis but didn't share the details. That must be what's on the hard drive, Maya said. There are files dated as recently as 3 months ago. If Vivian maintained her analysis for all these years, it wasn't out of bitterness or obsession. She was a patriot in the truest sense, someone who believed systems should function as designed, especially when national security is at stake. They passed a playground where children climbed on equipment while parents watched from nearby benches. The normalcy of the scene contrasted sharply with the conversation about classified documents and decades-old security breaches. There are people who could help evaluate these materials properly, Blackwood said after ensuring no one was within earshot. Former colleagues who maintain their integrity. A journalist I trust who specializes in defense oversight. But moving forward means making yourself visible to people who've invested decades in keeping these issues buried. What would Vivian want me to do? Maya asked, the weight of responsibility settling more heavily on her shoulders. She chose you specifically, Ms. Collins. Not her friends, not her colleagues, you. That suggests she saw something in you that she believed was necessary for this task. Blackwood stopped walking, facing her directly. What do you teach your students about historical accountability? The question caught Maya by surprise. That understanding our past mistakes is the only way to avoid repeating them. That transparency, however uncomfortable, is essential for progress. Blackwood nodded. Sounds like something Vivian would appreciate. She believed systems failed when accountability disappeared behind classification stamps and security protocols. They reached a small cafe at the edge of the park. Blackwood suggested they continue their conversation inside, away from the increasing chill of the afternoon. Once seated with coffee, he wrote another note on a napkin. Your aunt made enemies. Some still in positions of influence. Caution essential. Maya nodded her understanding before asking aloud, if these vulnerabilities still exist, wouldn't addressing them be in everyone's interest, regardless of past mistakes? Logically, yes. Bureaucratically and politically, it's more complicated. Admitting that known security weaknesses remained unaddressed for decades would end careers and possibly trigger investigations into contracts worth billions. The people involved would face serious consequences. So this isn't just about national security, it's about money and careers. It's always about both, Blackwood replied. The challenge is determining which matters more to the people involved. He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. There's someone else you should meet. Catherine Wheeler, she was part of our team back then. Retired now, but she maintained connections that I didn't. She might have insight into who would still care about keeping these issues quiet. Where can I find her? She lives in Lancaster. I can arrange a meeting, but I'll need a day or two. These days, Catherine is cautious about who she speaks with. He pulled out a business card and wrote a number on the back. This is my personal cell. Don't call my office line about this matter. As they prepared to leave, Blackwood placed a hand on Maya's arm. One more thing. What are you planning to do about the laundromat? I was going to sell it to the neighboring business owner. There's an offer of $12,000 on the table. Consider holding off on that decision, Blackwood advised. The laundromat may be more significant than you realize. Vivian chose that location very deliberately when she left government service. It's just a small business in a declining neighborhood. Vivian Collins never did anything without multiple reasons. The laundromat provided legitimate income and a practical cover for her activities, yes. But knowing Vivian, there may be more to it than just the hidden compartment. You found. This suggestion added yet another layer to Maya's already complicated inheritance. What had seemed like a straightforward property transaction now appeared to be part of her aunt's larger strategy, one that Maya was only beginning to understand. Back at her apartment that evening, Maya reviewed the documents again with fresh perspective from her conversation with Blackwood. Her aunt's analysis highlighted three major categories of security concerns: physical structural vulnerabilities, electronic surveillance weaknesses, and protocol failures. Each category contained detailed examples, annotated floor plans, and, in some cases, photographic evidence. The most recent files on the hard drive included news reports about a Pentagon renovation project scheduled to begin later that year, with Vivian's notes indicating that the project would potentially cement rather than resolve certain vulnerabilities identified decades earlier. Maya's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Wheeler agrees to meet. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Will send. Location in morning. NB. The rapid development both relieved and alarmed her. Things were moving quickly, perhaps too quickly. Maya checked her teaching schedule and realized she would need to request a substitute for her afternoon classes. The thought of calling in for such an unusual reason made her uncomfortable, but the significance of what she was dealing with outweighed her typical professional conscientiousness. She texted her department head claiming a family emergency related to her recently deceased aunt, technically not a lie, and received quick approval for a substitute. Then she called her father. "Dad, I need to ask you something about Aunt Vivian," she said when he answered. "Did she ever mention why she chose that specific location for her laundromat?" Alan Collins was quiet for a moment. "Not specifically. No, I remember being surprised when she left her government job to open a business so far from D.C. She said something about wanting a quieter life, but that never quite rang true for Vivian. She wasn't the type to retire to small-town life without reason." Professor Blackwood suggested the location might be significant. "Blackwood, you actually found him?" "Yes, I met with him today. He was helpful but cautious." Her father sighed heavily. "Maya, I'm worried about you getting pulled into whatever Vivian was involved in. She became increasingly isolated over the years. Kept to herself, always watching over her shoulder. That's no way to live. Did you ever ask her about it?" "Once, at Mom's funeral. She just said some responsibilities don't end with retirement. I thought she was being dramatic." He paused. "The laundromat opened in '97, I think. About a year after she left her government position." Maya made a mental note to check if anything significant had happened in Riverview Heights around that time. "Dad, I may need to take a few days to sort through all this. If anyone asks about me, would you just say I'm dealing with Aunt Vivian's estate? Nothing specific." "Now you're starting to sound like her," he replied, concern evident in his voice. "But yes, I can do that. Just promise me you'll be careful. And Maya? If things start feeling dangerous rather than just mysterious, walk away. No family legacy is worth your safety." After ending the call, Maya spent hours cross-referencing her aunt's notes with publicly available information about Pentagon security systems. The task would have been daunting for most people, but for a history teacher accustomed to piecing together narratives from fragmentary evidence, it was challenging but not impossible. By midnight, she had compiled her own summary of the key issues and the people involved. Several names appeared repeatedly in Vivian's notes: contractors, security officials, and project managers. Using her laptop, Maya researched where these individuals were now. Some had retired, others had moved to private security firms, and A few had risen to significant positions within defense and intelligence agencies. One name in particular stood out: Richard Keller, identified in Vivian's notes as a mid-level contract supervisor in 1996, was now Deputy Director of Facility Security at the Department of Defense. His signature appeared on several of the documents that had allegedly addressed Vivian's concerns, documents she had clearly believed were falsified to show compliance with security requirements that had never actually been implemented. As Maya finally prepared for bed, her phone chimed again. Another text from the unknown number. Check news about Blackwood. Be very careful tomorrow. Alarmed, Maya quickly searched for news about Nathan Blackwood. The most recent item was from just 2 hours earlier, a brief report that Professor Nathan Blackwood of Harrisburg University had been hospitalized following what police were describing as a home invasion incident. His condition was listed as serious but stable, with no suspects identified. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Less than 12 hours after meeting with Maya, the professor had been attacked in his home. The implications were clear. Someone was watching, someone knew about their meeting, and someone was willing to use violence to protect decades-old secrets. For the first time since discovering her aunt's hidden documents, Maya felt genuine fear rather than just academic intrigue. The historical mysteries she taught her students had real-world consequences, but were safely distant in time. This was immediate and potentially dangerous. Vivian Collins had spent decades hiding these materials, changing her entire life to protect information she believed was vital to national security. Now that responsibility, and apparently the risk, had passed to Maya, sleep was impossible now. She checked that her apartment door was locked, then wedged a chair under the handle for good measure. Moving methodically through each room, she closed and locked all windows, drew the blinds, and turned off most lights. The precautions felt melodramatic, yet the news about Blackwood suggested they were entirely warranted. In the darkness of her living room, Maya Collins sat with her aunt's metal case beside her, contemplating how quickly her life had changed. 2 days ago, her biggest concern had been paying off medical bills and student loans. Now she was hiding in her own apartment, afraid that people powerful enough to assault a university professor might come looking for her next. The $12,000 from selling the laundromat seemed increasingly irrelevant compared to the responsibility she had inherited. Whatever her aunt had discovered about Pentagon security vulnerabilities had been important enough to preserve for decades, important enough to pass on specifically to Maya, and apparently important enough for someone to attack. A man who might help bring that information to light. As dawn broke, Maya made a decision. She would meet Catherine Wheeler as planned, but she would take additional precautions. She copied key files to a secure cloud account, placed the original hard drive in a bank safe deposit box, and prepared a sealed envelope with a basic summary of what she had discovered to be delivered to her father if anything happened to her. The simple teacher who had inherited an abandoned laundromat was rapidly learning the practices of someone involved in matters of national security. The transformation would have been almost amusing if the stakes weren't so serious and the danger not so real. At precisely 8:17 the next morning, Maya's phone chimed with coordinates rather than an address, a security measure that confirmed her growing understanding of the world she had entered. Plotting the location on a map revealed a small coffee shop in Lancaster, about 40 minutes from her apartment. The choice made strategic sense, public enough to deter obvious threats, casual enough that a meeting wouldn't draw attention, and in a town where neither she nor Catherine Wheeler would likely be recognized. Maya dressed with unusual deliberation, choosing nondescript clothing that wouldn't stand out in anyone's memory. She transferred selected documents to a plain manila envelope, leaving most of the materials secured in various locations: the bank deposit box, her apartment, and a waterproof container hidden in the storage area of her building's basement. The distribution was intuitive rather than trained. but it seemed prudent not to keep everything in one place. The drive to Lancaster took her through rolling Pennsylvania countryside that would normally have been calming. Today, however, Maya found herself checking her rearview mirror with uncomfortable frequency, noting vehicles that maintained the same distance behind her for too long. After taking several unnecessary turns to confirm she wasn't being followed, she finally approached the designated coffee shop. The location was well chosen, a locally owned establishment on a busy street with multiple exits, large windows providing visibility in several directions, and enough customers to create anonymity without being so crowded that conversations could be easily overheard. Maya arrived 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table that allowed her to watch both the entrance and the parking area. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman in her late 60s with short silver hair and alert eyes entered the coffee shop. Unlike Blackwood's academic dishevelment, Catherine Wheeler projected military precision in her pressed slacks and tailored blazer. She ordered at the counter before scanning the room with practiced efficiency, her gaze settling on Maya within seconds. "Ms. Collins," she said, approaching the table. "Not a question, but a confirmation. Catherine Wheeler. Nathan said you have something interesting." No extended pleasantries, no expressions of sympathy about Vivian's passing, just immediate focus on the matter at hand. Maya gestured to the chair across from her. "Professor Blackwood was attacked last night," Maya said quietly once Wheeler was seated. "Did you know?" "I'm aware," Wheeler replied, her expression unchanged. "Hospital security has been supplemented. Nathan will recover, but the timing confirms what we suspected. Someone is watching very closely. We should keep this brief." Maya opened her manila envelope, sliding several key documents across the table. "My aunt preserved these materials for almost 30 years. She believed certain security vulnerabilities in the Pentagon were deliberately left unaddressed despite her reports." Wheeler examined the documents with remarkable speed, her eyes moving rapidly across pages that would have taken most people minutes to process. Her background as an intelligence analyst was evident in how efficiently she extracted and processed information. "Vivian always was meticulous," Wheeler commented, turning a page. "These access point vulnerabilities, they're still relevant. Despite the renovations, the core structural elements remain unchanged in many sections." She looked up at Maya. "Has anyone else seen these?" "Just Professor Blackwood, and only briefly. There's more on a hard drive," analysis my aunt continued until shortly before her death. Wheeler nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Vivian and I had different approaches. When our concerns were sidelined, I transferred to a different division. She persisted until they pushed her out." A flicker of what might have been regret crossed her face. Perhaps she was right to be stubborn. Who would still care about these documents after so many years? Maya asked. "3 groups," Wheeler replied without hesitation. "First, the individuals who knowingly suppressed these security concerns, some now in senior positions with considerable influence. Second, any contractors who saved millions by implementing substandard security measures and might face both legal consequences and financial clawbacks. Third, and most concerning, anyone who might have exploited these vulnerabilities over the decades. Exploited them how? These blueprints essentially provide a roadmap to bypass certain security systems," Wheeler explained. "In the wrong hands, they could facilitate unauthorized access to sensitive areas of the Pentagon. If someone has been using these vulnerabilities all these years, the implication hung in the air between them. Vivian Collins hadn't just uncovered negligence or corruption. She might have identified a security breach that had potentially been exploited for decades." "There's something else," Maya said, lowering her voice further. "Professor Blackwood suggested the location of my aunt's laundromat might be significant, that she chose it deliberately." Wheeler's expression sharpened. "Riverview Heights." "Yes. That would make sense. Why?" "It's just a small town with a declining economy. In 1997, It was also home to Eastland Technologies, a defense contractor that worked on the very security systems your aunt flagged as compromised. The company relocated to Virginia in 2003, but for those crucial early years after Vivian left government service, she positioned herself where she could monitor their activities. This revelation added yet another dimension to Maya's understanding of her aunt. Not only had Vivian preserved crucial evidence, she had strategically relocated to continue her investigation independently. The laundromat, Maya realized. It would have given her a perfectly innocent reason to be present in the community, to observe comings and goings, perhaps even to serve Eastland employees as customers. Wheeler nodded. Vivian was always thinking several moves ahead. She once told me that the best cover stories aren't stories at all. They're legitimate realities that provide natural access and reason for presence. Their conversation was interrupted by Wheeler's phone vibrating silently on the table. She checked the screen, her expression tightening imperceptibly. "We need to conclude this meeting," she said, gathering the documents and returning them to Maya. "Two suggestions before we part. First, investigate property records for the buildings surrounding the laundromat. Vivian may have established secondary positions. Second, there was a security analyst who worked at Eastland during that period who might be sympathetic, James Harrington. He's retired now, living in Pittsburgh. I believe he had concerns similar to Vivian's, but was equally unsuccessful in addressing them through official channels." Wheeler stood, straightening her blazer with military precision. "One final thing, Miss Collins. Your aunt dedicated decades to this cause, at significant personal cost. She clearly believed you were the right person to continue her work. That's not a small thing." With that assessment lingering between them, Wheeler departed as efficiently as she had arrived, leaving Maya with more questions than answers but a clearer sense of direction. The coffee shop continued its normal afternoon rhythm around her, customers coming and going, unaware of the national security implications, being discussed at a corner table. Maya stayed for another 30 minutes, processing the new information. The connection to Eastland Technologies provided critical context for her aunt's choice of location. If the laundromat had been strategically positioned for surveillance, what else might Vivian have established in Riverview Heights? As she drove back toward her apartment, Maya made a decision to return to the laundromat immediately. With this new perspective, she needed to examine the property more thoroughly, not just as a business to be sold, but as a strategic position in her aunt's decades-long mission. The closed sign still hung in the laundromat's window as Maya unlocked the front door, now seeing the space through entirely different eyes. What had initially appeared to be just an outdated small business now revealed itself as potentially something far more calculated. The large front windows provided excellent visibility of the main street. The rear of the building offered a direct view toward what Maya now knew had been the Eastland Technologies facility 3 blocks away. She moved methodically through the space, examining everything with new attention to potential dual purposes. The office area contained filing cabinets that had seemed to hold ordinary business records during her initial inspection. Now she pulled each drawer fully open, checking for false backs or hidden compartments. The third drawer revealed exactly that, a secondary space behind what appeared to be a solid back panel, containing a carefully maintained logbook with dates, times, and cryptic notation spanning years. The washing machine with the hidden compartment took on new significance as well. Examining the others in the row, Maya discovered that 2 more had similar modifications, different access codes, different contents. One contained optical surveillance, equipment that would have been cutting edge in the late 1990s, while another held what appeared to be signal interception devices. Her aunt had transformed an ordinary laundromat into a sophisticated monitoring station disguised in plain sight. As daylight began to fade, Maya became increasingly aware of her vulnerability. The empty laundromat, once simply an inheritance, to be sold, now felt exposed, a target for whoever had attacked Professor Blackwood. She gathered the logbook and a few smaller items, securing the hidden compartments and preparing to leave. The sound of a car door closing outside froze her in place. Through the newspaper-covered windows, she could make out the silhouette of someone approaching the front entrance. Maya quickly killed the lights and moved toward the back exit, her heart pounding. The jingle of keys in the front lock sent her hurrying through the darkened laundromat toward the rear door. As she slipped outside into the alley behind the building, she heard the front door open. Moving as quietly as possible, Maya made her way to where she had parked her car on a side street, constantly checking behind her. Once in her car, she took a circuitous route back to her apartment, making random turns and doubling back occasionally to ensure she wasn't followed. The techniques felt foreign to her methodical teacher's mind, yet they came with surprising instinct, perhaps some genetic echo of her aunt's caution. Back in her apartment, Maya examined her discoveries more carefully. The logbook contained what appeared to be surveillance notes, comings and goings at Eastland Technologies, meetings between specific individuals identified only by initials, and occasional longer entries documenting conversations overheard or information gleaned from Laundromat customers. One name appeared with unusual frequency in the later entries: R. Keller, the same Richard Keller, who had been a mid-level supervisor in 1996 and was now a deputy director at the Department of Defense. According to Vivian's notes, Keller had made multiple visits to Eastland between 1997 and 2003, often after hours and in vehicles registered to other individuals. The implications were troubling. If Richard Keller had been involved in suppressing Vivian's security concerns and maintained ongoing connections with the contractor responsible for the compromised systems, it suggested a level of collusion that went beyond simple negligence or cost-cutting. Maya's phone rang, her father calling. For a moment, she considered not answering, aware that her involvement in this matter was putting her at increasing risk. But concern for her dad won out. "Maya, where are you?" Alan Collins asked immediately, his voice tight with worry. "At my apartment, Dad. What's wrong?" "Someone came to my apartment asking questions about you and Vivian. Said they were from the government, investigating pension fraud related to her federal service." Maya's blood ran cold. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing specific. Side I didn't know much about Vivian's government work or her finances. But Maya, they knew you'd visited the laundromat. They knew you'd taken a day off work. They asked if you'd mentioned finding anything unusual. These weren't legitimate investigators, Dad. I figured that out when they left. No cards, no contact information for follow-up. Just questions and vague reassurances." Her father's voice dropped lower. "Maya, whatever Vivian got you involved in, it's not just academic anymore. These people weren't just curious. They were fishing for specific information. I'm being careful, Dad, I promise. Your idea of careful and Vivian's might be very different things." He sighed heavily. "I've been thinking about something. After Mom died, when Vivian came for the funeral, she gave me a safety deposit box key. Said if anything unusual ever happened to her, I should give it to you. I thought it was just her being dramatic, but now you have another key." "Where is it?" "In my fire safe. I can bring it to you tomorrow." "No," Maya said immediately. "Don't come to my apartment. Let's meet somewhere public. The mall food court, maybe. Lots of people, multiple exits." The silence that followed her suggestion spoke volumes. Her father was finally understanding the seriousness of the situation. "Noon tomorrow," he agreed. "Maya, until then, maybe stay with a friend? Somewhere that's not connected to you directly." The suggestion was sound, but Maya realized with some sadness that her life as a dedicated teacher had left her with colleagues, rather than close friends, no one she could involve in something this potentially dangerous without putting them at risk too. I'll figure something out, Dad. Just be careful, okay? Don't tell anyone we spoke or that we're meeting." After ending the call, Maya packed an overnight bag and booked a room at a budget hotel on the outskirts of town using a booking app that didn't require immediate identification. It wasn't sophisticated tradecraft, but it would create some distance between her and anyone watching her apartment. At the hotel, Maya spread her gathered materials across the bed, her aunt's logs, the documents she'd selected from the metal case, and her own growing collection of notes. Patterns were emerging, connections forming between names and events that spanned decades. Her history teacher's skill at constructing narratives from fragmented evidence served her, well as she pieced together the story of what appeared to be long-term collusion between defense officials and contractors. The central figure remained Richard Keller, whose career had advanced steadily while the security vulnerabilities identified by Vivian remained unaddressed. According to her aunt's notes, Keller had been the primary obstacle to implementing proper security measures in 1996, repeatedly rejecting her reports and eventually contributing to her forced resignation. Maya's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. "Wheeler says move location immediately. Associates of K have been asking about Laundromat ownership transfer." The warning sent a spike of adrenaline through Maya's system. She had only just checked into this hotel. How could anyone have tracked her here so quickly? Unless they were monitoring her phone or credit cards. The realization that she was dealing with people who potentially had access to sophisticated surveillance capabilities was chilling. Maya quickly gathered her materials and checked out of the hotel less than 2 hours after checking in, paying cash for the shortened stay. She drove aimlessly for a while, eventually finding a 24-hour diner where she could sit in a back booth with coffee and continue reviewing documents while planning her next move. By midnight, exhaustion was competing with anxiety, making clear thinking difficult. Maya finally drove to a different hotel in another part of town, paying cash and using her middle name during check-in. The precautions felt almost absurd for a high school history teacher, yet the attack on Professor Blackwood and the suspicious visitors to her father's apartment confirmed they were necessary. In the anonymous hotel room, Maya set an alarm for early morning and collapsed fully clothed on top of the covers, her aunt's documents secured in her bag beside the bed. As she drifted toward uneasy sleep, she reflected on how completely her life had transformed in just a few days. The financial pressures that had seemed so overwhelming were now distant concerns, compared to the responsibility she had inherited, and the apparent danger it entailed. Yet beneath the fear and uncertainty, Maya recognized something else emerging, a sense of purpose that transcended her classroom teaching. Her aunt had dedicated decades to exposing vulnerabilities that potentially compromised national security, persisting despite institutional resistance and personal cost. Now that mission had passed to Maya, not randomly, but because Vivian Collins had recognized something in her niece that she believed was necessary to complete this work. Morning came too quickly, and with it a renewed determination. Maya showered and changed clothes, reviewing her plan for meeting her father while remaining vigilant for surveillance. The additional safety deposit box key could provide crucial information, perhaps even evidence, that would allow her to take this matter to authorities who weren't potentially compromised by connections to Keller. As she prepared to leave the hotel, Maya's phone rang, not her father, but Zach, her teaching assistant. "Miss Collins, sorry to bother you during your family emergency, but something weird just happened," he said immediately. "2 men came to the school asking about you. They said they were from the Department of Education, conducting a routine evaluation, but the questions were all personal. How long I'd known you, if you'd mentioned your aunt recently, if you'd been acting unusually." Maya's grip tightened on her phone. "What did you tell them?" "Not much. It felt off, you know. They didn't have proper ID, and when I mentioned that the principal should be involved in any official evaluation, they got kind of pushy. Zach's voice lowered. I told Principal Alvarez afterward, and she said there was no scheduled evaluation. She called district security. Zach, listen to me carefully. If these men or anyone else comes back asking about me, don't tell them anything. Not where I might be, not who I'm in contact with, nothing. Miss Collins, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble? Maya considered how much to share with her earnest teaching assistant. It's complicated, Zach. My aunt left me something important, and there are people who don't want it to become public. I'm handling it, but I need to be careful right now. Can I help? I mean, whatever this is sounds serious. His offer touched her, loyal, even without understanding the situation. Actually, yes. Could you collect the assignments from my senior class and grade them? The rubric is in my desk drawer. It would help keep things normal at school while I'm dealing with this. Of course, no problem. He paused. Just be safe, okay? Whatever this is. After ending the call, Maya texted her father to change their meeting location. The mall now seemed too predictable. Instead, she suggested a public park near his retirement community, a place with multiple approaches and good visibility. The morning sun cast long shadows across the park as Maya arrived 30 minutes early, circling the area twice to check for unfamiliar vehicles or people who seemed out of place. Her father was equally cautious, approaching from an unexpected direction and scanning his surroundings before sitting beside her on a bench overlooking the duck pond. I didn't think Vivian's paranoia would ever touch you, he said quietly, placing a small envelope between them on the bench. I always thought she was overreacting, living in some spy fantasy after leaving government work. Now I'm not so sure. Maya took the envelope, feeling the outline of a key inside. Dad, I need you to go stay with Uncle Robert for a few days. Just as a precaution. Alan Collins studied his daughter's face. You've changed, Maya. There's something in your eyes now, the same thing I used to see in Vivian's. That focused intensity, like you're calculating moves in a chess game no one else can see. I'm still me, Dad, just dealing with something important. That's exactly what Vivian would say. He shook his head slightly. You know what the sad thing is? She was probably right all along. About the security issues, about the people trying to keep them quiet. But it cost her everything, her career, relationships, the chance at a normal life. For 30 years, she lived in that apartment above her laundromat, watching and waiting, convinced she was serving some greater purpose. Maybe she was, Maya said softly. Maybe, but at what cost? He placed his hand over hers briefly. Just remember that Vivian made her choices, but you still have yours. Whatever she found, whatever she was protecting, it doesn't have to define your life the way it defined hers. His words carried the weight of family history and genuine concern. Maya nodded, understanding his fear that she might follow her aunt's path into isolation and obsession. I'll be careful, Dad. This won't become my whole life, I promise. As they parted ways, Maya clutching the envelope containing the additional safety deposit box key, she wondered if that was a promise she could keep. The simple teacher who had inherited an abandoned laundromat was already transformed by what she had discovered. Her perspective, priorities, and even daily behaviors altered by the responsibility she now carried. The weight of her aunt's legacy was substantial. But as Maya drove toward the bank where she hoped this new key would unlock further answers, she felt an unexpected sense of clarity. Throughout her teaching career, she had emphasized to students that history wasn't just facts in textbooks, but the cumulative actions of individuals, making difficult choices in complex circumstances. Now she found herself at exactly such a juncture, where personal decisions could have far-reaching consequences beyond her individual life. What Vivian Collins had begun 3 decades earlier now continued through her niece, not because Maya had sought this responsibility, but because she had the character and capabilities to carry it forward when it found her. The inheritance was more than documents or a laundromat. It was a mission to ensure that truth prevailed over convenience, that accountability existed even in the shadowy world of classified information and national security. As the bank came into view, Maya checked once more for any signs of surveillance. The simple teacher was learning quickly, adapting to circumstances that would have seemed unimaginable days earlier. Whatever the safety deposit box contained, she was increasingly certain of one thing: her aunt had chosen her successor wisely. The safety deposit box revealed far more than Maya had anticipated. Unlike the practical metal case from the laundromat, this larger container held meticulously organized evidence spanning decades, financial records tracing suspicious payments between defense contractors and officials, photographs documenting after-hours meetings, and most significantly, a sealed envelope labeled insurance containing what appeared to be sworn affidavits from 3 former Eastland Technologies employees detailing how security specifications had been deliberately altered to reduce costs while maintaining the appearance of compliance. "You really were building the case all these years," Maya whispered to her absent aunt as she examined the materials. Vivian Collins hadn't merely been documenting security vulnerabilities. She had been gathering evidence of criminal conspiracy involving fraud, potentially endangering national security for profit. The scope was staggering: millions of dollars saved through substandard security implementations, officials receiving consulting fees through shell companies, and a systematic effort to discredit or remove anyone who raised concerns. The most damning evidence focused on Richard Keller, documenting his rise from mid-level contract supervisor to deputy director through a series of promotions that coincided with his role in suppressing security concerns. Financial records suggested substantial payments laundered through consulting firms and real estate investments, far exceeding what his government salary could support. Maya carefully photographed key documents before returning everything except the affidavits to the box. These sworn statements from insiders might provide the leverage needed to ensure the evidence received proper attention rather than being buried again. As she secured the box and left the bank, Maya's teacher's mind was already organizing the strategy, identifying which authorities might be trusted, what evidence would be most compelling, and how to protect herself while bringing this information forward. Her first call was to Catherine Wheeler, using a prepaid phone purchased that morning. "I found additional evidence," Maya explained once Wheeler answered. Affidavits from former Eastland employees confirming deliberate security compromises. Financial records showing apparent payoffs. My aunt wasn't just tracking vulnerabilities. She was building a criminal case. "That changes the calculation significantly," Wheeler replied, her tone measured. "Evidence of criminal conspiracy makes this a matter for the Justice Department, not just internal Pentagon review. But it also increases the risk to anyone bringing this forward. I need to speak with someone who has the authority to act on this evidence but isn't potentially compromised by connections to Keller. Any suggestions?" "There's a senior inspector at the Defense Criminal Investigative Service, Eliza Morgan. She specializes in contractor fraud and has a reputation for independence. She's also due to retire in 3 months, which means she has little to lose by pursuing this aggressively." Wheeler paused. "I can arrange an introduction, but it should happen quickly. If Keller's associates are already searching for you, the window for safe action is narrowing." They arranged to meet Morgan the following morning at a federal building in Philadelphia, a location with sufficient security to deter obvious threats. Maya spent the day preparing a concise summary of the evidence, organizing it chronologically and highlighting the most egregious examples of security compromises and financial improprieties. That evening, as she worked in yet another anonymous hotel room, Maya received a text from Zach. 2 men came back to school. Principal called police. They left before officers arrived. Be careful. The pursuit was intensifying. Whoever was trying to locate her was becoming more aggressive, less concerned about maintaining the appearance of legitimacy. Maya considered contacting local police herself but hesitated, without knowing who might be compromised or influenced. Involving law enforcement could potentially expose rather than protect her. Sleep came in fitful bursts that night, her mind cycling through scenarios and contingencies. By morning, Maya had developed a more comprehensive strategy. She created digital copies of all key evidence, encrypting them and storing them in multiple cloud locations with instructions for access sent to her father, Professor Blackwood, and Catherine Wheeler. If anything happened to her, the information would still reach authorities through multiple channels. The federal building in Philadelphia stood as a stark limestone monolith, its security presence visible and reassuring after days of uncertainty. Maya passed through metal detectors and identity verification, the normality of the process almost comforting despite her unusual circumstances. Eliza Morgan met them in a small conference room, a woman in her early 60s with short gray hair and the direct gaze of someone who had spent decades cutting through obfuscation and excuses. No pleasantries, no small talk, just immediate focus on the matter at hand. "Miss Collins, I understand you've inherited some sensitive materials from your aunt," Morgan began once they were seated. "Catherine has briefed me on the general situation, but I'd like to hear directly from you what you've discovered and what evidence supports it." For the next hour, Maya presented the case her aunt had constructed over decades, the identified security vulnerabilities, the evidence of deliberate suppression, the financial trail suggesting corruption, and the sworn statements from former employees. Morgan listened without interruption, occasionally making notes but offering no reaction until Maya had finished. "Your aunt was remarkably thorough," Morgan said finally. "This would represent one of the most significant cases of defense contractor fraud I've encountered in 30 years, not just in dollar amounts, but in potential national security implications. Is it enough to warrant an official investigation?" Maya asked. "More than enough for me to open a preliminary inquiry. The affidavits provide first-hand testimony that would survive initial scrutiny, and the financial records establish patterns consistent with corruption." Morgan leaned forward slightly. "But you should understand what happens next. Once I formally open this investigation, I'll need to secure all original evidence. The individuals implicated will be notified of the allegations against them, though not immediately of the specific evidence or witnesses." "Including Richard Keller?" "Eventually, yes. Given his position, notification would follow specific protocols and involve higher-level approvals, but he would ultimately be informed." Morgan's expression remained neutral. "This creates a period of vulnerability for anyone associated with bringing these allegations forward." Catherine Wheeler, who had remained largely silent during the presentation, spoke up. "There have already been concerning incidents, Professor Blackwood's attack, suspicious individuals making inquiries about Miss Collins. We believe Keller or his associates may already suspect these materials have surfaced." Morgan nodded. "Then timing becomes crucial. I can initiate protective measures for key witnesses as part of the investigation, but only after formal proceedings begin. There would be a gap where unofficial pressure or threats might continue or escalate." "How long would this gap be?" Maya asked. "Typically, 3 to 5 days between my initial filing and the implementation of witness protection protocols. During that time, I would recommend extreme caution." Maya considered this timeline. 5 days of continued risk seemed manageable compared to the weeks or months that might be required for a complete investigation. But another concern nagged at her. What about the actual security vulnerabilities my aunt identified? Some may still exist in Pentagon systems. While the fraud investigation proceeds, those weaknesses remain unaddressed. Morgan exchanged glances with Wheeler. "That presents a separate challenge. The fraud investigation would eventually lead to security reviews, but the timeline could extend for months. If these vulnerabilities are as significant as your aunt believed, that delay might be problematic. There may be a parallel approach, Wheeler suggested. I still have contacts in Pentagon security who operate independently from Keller's division. With the right documentation, they could initiate an immediate review of critical systems without waiting for the fraud investigation to conclude. Two simultaneous paths, Maya said, the strategy crystallizing in her mind. Address the security vulnerabilities directly through trusted channels while pursuing the fraud and corruption through official investigation. Morgan nodded approvingly. It's the approach I would recommend. The security issues and the criminal behavior are connected, but can be addressed through different mechanisms. She gathered her notes. I'll need the original affidavits and supporting financial documentation to initiate my investigation. The security vulnerability information can go with Catherine to her Pentagon contacts. As they worked out the logistics of transferring materials and establishing secure communication protocols, Maya felt a weight lifting. For days, she had carried the full responsibility of her aunt's legacy alone, unsure how to proceed or who to trust. Now, professionals with the authority and expertise to address these issues were taking appropriate action. The path forward was becoming clearer. There's one additional matter, Morgan said as their meeting concluded. The individuals involved in this conspiracy have successfully concealed their activities for decades. They've already demonstrated willingness to use intimidation and potentially violence to protect themselves. Until my investigation reaches the point of formal interviews and charges, you remain at risk, Ms. Collins. What do you suggest? Temporary relocation, minimal digital footprint, no contact with your normal associates except through secure channels. Morgan's expression softened slightly. Essentially, disappear for a few weeks. I realize that's disruptive to your life and career, but given what's already occurred with Professor Blackwood, it's the safest approach. The recommendation wasn't entirely unexpected, but hearing it stated so directly emphasized the reality of Maya's situation. She thought of her students, her father, her apartment with its carefully curated collection of historical books and artifacts, all the elements of her normal life that would need to be temporarily abandoned. I understand, she said finally. I'll make arrangements. As they prepared to leave, Wheeler took Maya aside. There's something we haven't discussed yet, the laundromat. Given what we now know about its strategic purpose and the evidence it still contains, selling it immediately might be premature. Maya had almost forgotten about the original $12,000 offer that had seemed so significant just days earlier. What would you recommend? Maintain ownership for now. Once the investigation is underway, the property itself may become evidence, and there may be additional materials hidden there that even you haven't discovered yet. The suggestion made sense, though it meant postponing the financial relief Maya had initially anticipated. Yet another sacrifice required by her aunt's legacy, though one that now seemed minor compared to the temporary relocation she was facing. Outside the federal building, Wheeler provided Maya with contact information for a former intelligence colleague who specialized in helping witnesses go gray during sensitive investigations. He can provide advice on secure temporary housing, digital security, and maintaining essential communications without creating trackable patterns. They parted with the understanding that their next contact would come through secure channels established by Morgan's office. As Maya walked to her car, the spring sunshine felt warmer, the urban landscape more vibrant. Despite the challenges ahead, she had taken decisive action to address both the security vulnerabilities and the corruption her aunt had spent decades documenting. Progress was finally happening. That sense of accomplishment carried her through the difficult conversations that followed, arranging an extended leave of absence from her teaching position through a carefully worded email to Principal Alvarez, calling her father to explain her temporary disappearance, and packing essential items from her apartment, while leaving most possessions behind. Each step was a severing of normal connections, a movement toward the temporary invisibility that Morgan had recommended. Wheeler's contact proved invaluable, helping Maya secure a month-to-month rental in a small town 60 miles away, establishing basic protocols for secure communication, and providing practical advice on minimizing digital and physical footprints. By nightfall, Maya Collins, history teacher, daughter, apartment dweller, had effectively disappeared, replaced by a woman living under a temporary identity in an anonymous rental unit with cash for expenses and minimal connections to her previous life. The transition should have felt traumatic, but Maya discovered an unexpected sense of liberation in the simplicity of her temporary existence. Without daily teaching responsibilities, digital distractions, or social obligations, she found space for reflection that had been absent in her busy professional life. In this quiet interim, Maya began piecing together a more complete understanding of her aunt. Through the documents, photographs, and journals she had preserved, Vivian Collins emerged not as the distant, reserved figure from family gatherings, but as a woman of remarkable determination and principle, someone who had sacrificed career advancement, relationships, and comfort to pursue truth when institutional structures failed. 3 days into her temporary relocation, Maya received her first secure communication from Morgan. Investigation officially opened. Preliminary protective measures in place. Initial document verification confirms authenticity of affidavits. Stay secure for 72 more hours. The news brought both relief and renewed caution. The official machinery was now in motion, but the most vulnerable period, when targets became aware of the investigation, but hadn't yet been formally constrained by its processes, was just beginning. That evening, Maya received an unexpected message through the secure channel established by Wheeler. Blackwood released from hospital. Requests contact when secure method available. The professor's recovery was welcome news, but his desire for contact suggested he might have additional information to share. Following the established protocol, Maya arranged a video call through encrypted channels for the following day. Blackwood appeared on screen still bearing visible evidence of his attack, a healing cut above one eye, bruising along his jawline, but his academic intensity remained undiminished. "Ms. Collins, I'm relieved to see you're safe," he began. "I've been briefed on developments with the DCIS investigation. That's excellent progress. How are you recovering, Professor?" "Well enough. The physical aspects heal quickly at my age. It's not the first time I've encountered resistance to uncomfortable truths." His expression grew more serious. "But I contacted you because I've been reviewing some of Vivian's earlier communications with me, specifically regarding her theories about how these security vulnerabilities might have been exploited." Maya leaned closer to her screen. What did she suspect? "Your aunt believed that at least 3 breach events at the Pentagon between 1998 and 2017 may have utilized the vulnerabilities. She identified instances where sensitive information was accessed without authorization. The official investigations attributed these to either technical malfunctions or external hacking, but Vivian saw patterns suggesting internal facilitation." "You're saying someone might have been deliberately exploiting these weaknesses to access classified information?" "Precisely. And if that's true, the implications extend far beyond contractor fraud or bureaucratic cover-ups. This could potentially involve espionage." The suggestion sent a chill through Maya. Her aunt's concerns had already expanded from specific security vulnerabilities to evidence of corruption. If Blackwood was correct, the full scope might include deliberate compromise of national security information. "Does Morgan know about this aspect?" "Not yet. Vivian's analysis was largely theoretical. She documented correlations between security incidents and the vulnerabilities she'd identified, but couldn't prove causation without access to classified investigations. I wanted to discuss it with you first, given your unique position as her designated successor. Maya considered the implications carefully. If these breaches involved actual espionage rather than just fraud, the individuals involved would have even more motivation to prevent exposure. Indeed. Which is why I wanted to ensure you're taking appropriate precautions. Blackwood adjusted his position, wincing slightly from apparently still tender injuries. There's one other matter. In my research specialty, we often find that individuals who maintain long-term covert activities establish contingency measures, fail-safes designed to activate if they become unable to continue their work. You think Aunt Vivian might have created such measures? It would align with her methodical approach. The distributed evidence we've already discovered suggests strategic thinking about preservation and eventual disclosure. There may be additional mechanisms she put in place to ensure her work wouldn't be lost or suppressed if something happened to her. This perspective gave Maya a new avenue to consider. Her aunt had clearly planned meticulously for the transfer of information after her death, the hidden compartments, the safety deposit box, the strategic instructions. What other contingencies might she have established? The laundromat, Maya said suddenly. Wheeler suggested I maintain ownership because there might be additional materials hidden there. But what if it's more than just hidden documents? What if Aunt Vivian established some kind of timed disclosure mechanism? Blackwood nodded. It would be consistent with her approach. Intelligence professionals often create deadman switches, systems designed to release information automatically if regular maintenance actions aren't performed. I need to examine the laundromat more thoroughly, Maya decided. There could be critical information or systems there that we haven't yet discovered. Proceed with extreme caution, Blackwood warned. If Keller's associates are monitoring the property, returning there could expose you to significant risk. I'll coordinate with Morgan's team, Maya assured him. They've established surveillance at key locations related to the investigation. They could verify the laundromat is secure before I approach. After ending the call, Maya contacted Morgan through their secure channel to request both surveillance of the laundromat and eventual escort for a careful examination of the property. The response came within hours. Surveillance in place. Property appears unmonitored currently. Can arrange secure access in 48 hours when first phase of official interviews begins. Keller and associates will be occupied with investigators. The timing aligned perfectly with the protective measures Morgan had described. Once the first formal interviews began, the targets of the investigation would be under sufficient scrutiny to limit their ability to take extra-legal actions against witnesses or evidence. The window of greatest vulnerability would be closing. During the waiting period, Maya continued reviewing her aunt's materials, now with specific attention to any references to automated systems or timed mechanisms. Several entries in later journals mentioned contingency protocols and automated verification sequences, but without specific details about their nature or location. One cryptic note from just 6 months before Vivian's death particularly caught Maya's attention. Sequence initiation set for June 30th, 2025. If not reset by May 1st. Disclosure proceeds automatically. Maintenance access via primary system only. The current date was April 12, 2025. If Maya's interpretation was correct, her aunt had established some automated disclosure mechanism set to activate in less than 3 months if not reset within the next few weeks. The reference to primary system suggested this reset needed to be performed at a specific location, most likely the laundromat itself. When the scheduled time for examining the laundromat arrived, Maya met 2 DCIS agents at a designated location before proceeding to the property. Their presence provided both security and official documentation of anything discovered, ensuring proper chain of custody for potential evidence. The laundromat appeared unchanged since her last visit. The faded awning, newspaper-covered windows, and closed sign preserving the appearance of a simply abandoned business. With agents positioned to monitor approaches to the building, Maya unlocked the front door and entered, now viewing the space through the lens of Blackwood's suggestion about contingency measures. "What exactly are we looking for?" asked Agent Torres, the senior DCIS investigator accompanying her. "Any evidence of automated systems, timers, or electronic devices that might be designed to activate in the absence of regular maintenance," Maya explained. "My aunt appears to have created some kind of dead-end switch set to trigger in the coming months." They began a methodical search, examining not just the washing machines with their hidden compartments, but all aspects of the laundromat's infrastructure, electrical panels, ventilation systems, plumbing access points. The search expanded to include the small apartment above the laundromat where Vivian had lived, revealing additional surveillance equipment positioned to monitor the former Eastland Technologies building and surrounding streets. The breakthrough came when Maya examined what appeared to be an ordinary thermostat in the laundromat's office area. Unlike the older mechanical model in the main laundry area, this digital device seemed newer and featured an unusual number of programming options. When she removed its cover, she discovered not the expected temperature control system, but a sophisticated electronic module connected to both the building's power supply and an independent battery backup. "I think this is it," Maya called to Agent Torres. "This isn't a thermostat at all. It's disguised as one, but it's actually some kind of timer or control system." The agent photographed the device before Maya carefully disconnected its cover, to reveal a small display showing a countdown. 49 days remaining. Enter reset code or sequence proceeds. 49 days would put us at May 31st, Torres noted. "One day before the deadline mentioned in your aunt's notes." The device had a keypad beneath the display, clearly designed for entering a reset code. But what would that code be? Maya had successfully used her birthday and her father's birthday to access other secured items, but this appeared to require something different, possibly related to the primary system mentioned in Vivian's notes. "The washing machine with the first hidden compartment," Maya suggested. She called it the primary access point in some of her notes. The code might be related to that system. They returned to the third washing machine from the left wall, the first one Maya had discovered. Examining it more carefully now, she noticed something she had missed previously: a small service panel on the underside of the control interface. That appeared to have been modified. Opening it revealed not washing machine components, but a small digital display, showing a 6-digit code that changed every 30 seconds. "It's a rotating authentication code," Torres observed, "similar to security tokens used for accessing classified systems. Your aunt was using military-grade security protocols." Maya quickly photographed the current code and returned to the thermostat device, entering the 6 digits before they changed. The countdown display immediately shifted to reset confirmed 365 days until next required maintenance. "She reset the timer for a full year," Maya said, understanding flooding through her. "My aunt created a system that required annual maintenance to prevent automatic disclosure of her evidence. When she died and couldn't perform that maintenance, the countdown began. If I hadn't discovered all this, in 49 days some automated process would have triggered." "Triggered what exactly?" Torres asked. The answer came as they continued examining the device, discovering it was connected to both an internet module and a small printer. According to a maintenance log stored in its memory, the system was programmed to automatically print and email a complete summary of Vivian's evidence to 27 different recipients: journalists, oversight committees, inspectors general, and independent security researchers, if not reset within the specified time frame. "A dead woman's switch," Torres said with professional appreciation. "Your aunt ensured that even if something happened to her, her evidence wouldn't remain buried." The annual maintenance requirement, meant that as long as she was alive and able, she controlled the disclosure timing. Once she couldn't perform that maintenance, the truth would come out automatically, Maya finished. She built a failsafe to ensure these security vulnerabilities and the corruption behind them would eventually be exposed, no matter what. As they documented this final piece of Vivian's intricate system, Maya felt a profound connection to her aunt's foresight and determination. The simple laundromat had concealed not just evidence and surveillance equipment, but an automated justice mechanism, a system designed to ensure that truth would eventually prevail, even if its guardian could no longer protect it. The discovery completed the picture of Vivian Collins that had been emerging through her documents and records. Not a paranoid recluse as some family members had suspected, but a principled professional who had created sophisticated systems to continue her mission beyond her own lifetime. She had anticipated obstacles, planned for contingencies, and ensured multiple paths to eventual disclosure of the truth she had worked so long to document. Standing in the laundromat that had served as her aunt's cover and operational base for decades, Maya recognized that the inheritance she had received went far beyond property or documents. Vivian Collins had passed to her niece a legacy of persistence and principle, a demonstration that one person's commitment to truth could withstand decades of institutional resistance and powerful opposition. The simple teacher who had inherited an abandoned laundromat had discovered not just Pentagon blueprints and evidence of corruption, but a profound example of how determination and strategic thinking could create pathways for truth when normal channels failed. Whatever challenges remained in the investigation ahead, Maya now carried not just her aunt's evidence but her inspiration, a template for how conviction could be translated into effective action, even against seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.